Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
Every episode, we are so honored and blessed to share stories with amazing, compassionate, and wise guests. So let's get started. Welcome, everyone, and we want to give a special welcome to Reverend Bodhi Be, the warrior of the heart and the protector of the sacred. Reverend Bodhi Be is an ordained interfaith minister and a teacher in the Sufi lineage of Samuel Lewis and Hazrat Inayat Khan.
He is the founder and executive director of Doorway into Light, a nonprofit organization on Maui. Doorway into Light operates Hawaii's only nonprofit funeral home since 2012. The Reverend Bodhi is a funeral director, an end-of-life and bereavement counselor, and educator. He is continuing the work Ram Dass helped birth in the fields of conscious dying in America.
So, Bodhi, thank you again for being here. It's really an honor and a privilege to spend time with you, a good friend and a good teacher and a mentor. So we would like to start out with a question of when did you first become aware of death?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. Maybe many of us first became aware of death watching TV. I lived in a city, so I didn't really have any pets. So I never experienced the death of let's say, a cat or a dog. I'd hear about it, certainly. Very rarely, though. People didn't really talk about it. It wasn't really until I was 17 and my dad suddenly died. And that was, in many ways, the giant turning point in my life. There it was. I mean, I could go on about that piece.
Yeah, well, if you have more to share, we'd certainly love to hear about it.
That is exactly what we have, the time of our life. Like, I'm having the time of my life. So is everybody. I'd never seen a dead body. I'd never really seen anybody grieving. My family didn't really express emotions. I had a number of mixed emotions about it myself. I was a high school senior and hated my dad at the time. But maybe the most important piece, or one of the important pieces, was when we were at the cemetery, which was this gigantic cemetery that went on and on and on outside of New York City. And it was just, I'd never even really spent any time in a cemetery. So that in itself was, wow. Being in a big crowded cemetery full of tombstones, pretty much as far as I could see. But what I could see beyond the cemetery was New York City off in the distance. And in a different direction was a giant auto wrecking yard where there were piles and piles of rusted cars. And my brother and sister, they never saw what I saw. And I saw that when my dad's casket was being lowered into the grave, a giant crane was lowering a rusted, flattened car onto a pile of rusted, flattened cars. And when I was 17, I didn't even understand what I was seeing, and certainly didn't have any language for it. But I saw something. I saw both those things, and that's a very strong impression for me.
Wow, a lot of symbolism there going on around you. Mm.
That's so beautiful, Bodhi, because I think that people who are death aware are also noticing other aspects of deaths in the world. Like that flattened car is an end to that car. And, I'd say a majority of our culture doesn't attend to any of those little details that waft past.
Or the truth that we're going to die and we don't know when.
Right.
I think most people don't know that, except there's information in their heads.
If it's even that.
Mm-hmm.
We know that other people die.
Yeah.
We see that. We hear about that. I mean, when I ask people, how many of you know you're going to die and you don't know when? And Wakil, you've been in that group where everybody raises their hand and looks at me like, well, that's a dumb question. Everybody knows that. But people know that as a piece of information. It's not a realized, embodied truth that affects how people live every day, except other than to run away from it and not think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I think about death every day, but just as an aside, I have a printout of how many weeks you have if you live to be 90, and it's in my kitchen cupboard. So when I open that particular cupboard door, I can I'll notice it. And sometimes I actually stand there and be like, this is where I'm at. If I live to be 90, this is how many weeks I have left to do whatever I want to do. And so, I've had people say that's really bizarre. And I'm like, It's so exciting, though. I'm so excited. There's just like so much to do in here now. And I can't wait for the other side. Like, what's going to happen?
There's a built-in entitlement to that particular graph, which I give out at our training. The notion that we expect to have 90 years.
That's true too. That is true. My dad loves to check actuarial tables to see how long he's going to live based on all these little random things. And that's also a little strange for me because he keeps thinking he's going to die at 87. And I was like, Dad, what if you don't? Is it going to be disappointing? like you didn't get it right?
A failure.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. So what are you doing day to day? Especially since you have this foundation of awareness around death and dying. What is your current role?
Well, I'm on call as a funeral director. That's an ongoing thing. They don't have a way to make the phone ring if it's good news or bad news. And either way, the phone rings the same. And so I pretty much am on call, at least during the daylight hours, and need to show up to him, maybe help go pick up a body of someone who just died, and everything that comes forth from that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an ongoing thing. What else am I doing? I'm doing quite a bit of counseling. There's certainly, as you can imagine, a lot of grief in general. Who's not grieving what's happening in the world right now?
Yeah,
that's right.
In terms of what happened here on Maui and the fires in Lahaina, we've all been changed by that. And maybe that's a permanent change in some ways for Maui. I'm being called on to counsel. Our funeral home is now offering, and has been since the Lahaina fire, absolutely free, no cost burial, funeral, ocean body burial, and cremation services for Lahaina families who've had somebody die in the fire. So that's an ongoing thing, meeting with families. Very, very challenging in some ways for what they're going through. And in the midst of having everything they own gone and burned down, there might be the only person in the family that lived. Those kind of stories, common stories. What else am I doing? I just taught a class on Saturday called Choosing to End One's Life. Touched into that whole piece of what's happening in our culture and how that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. I'm designing a training, an online training that'll start in January that I'd let people know about, called Facing Death, Nourishing Life, which is threefold. It's about doing the work of preparing for one's own death, and the logistical, physical pieces, the emotional, psychological work, and the spiritual work of completing a life and coming to peace with one's life. I'm going to begin a certification program also in January.
It's all death. Yeah, I actually love it.
Yeah.
That's only one part of my life, though, because I live in the jungle with my wife, and I have kids and grandkids that live very close by. And one of my kids is engaged to be married, and they're going to have a baby in the spring. And we have gardens and orchards, and so there's a lot of different ways I'm called upon in the community that isn't specifically about death at all. Just as let's say an elder in training, or a good friend.
Yeah,
good friend.
Yeah. The class you're talking about, I did take that class with you last year, and I highly recommend it to anyone. Yeah, it's a great class.
I think I might have to take it.
I think you should.
It's evolving. That particular course keeps evolving, and I think will become the foundation of the book.
Yeah, and it actually inspired the little class that I'm doing about more of the practical pieces. So it inspired that and has added to that as well. And I know what you mean. It keeps, every time you do it, something changes. It gets a little better. So
yeah, I congratulate you. I'm so delighted to see that you've taken it in a direction to bring more benefit to your community. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you for your support on that.
I'm inspired too. I woke up this morning and I sometimes teach at the seminary, and I've been teaching death and dying for BIPOC people and how it's different from the white mainstream culture. And I'm like, I need to start teaching that everywhere, because there's nobody's kind of coming to me and saying, like, this is a place where folks need more information. They don't get enough information, and they don't get supported at the end of life oftentimes. So I'm so excited we're here.
Yeah. What would you say are the biggest challenges that you have in the work that you're doing?
Showing up absolutely, fully, and completely for some very intense situations. We went and picked up a 5-month-old baby from the morgue that had been autopsied to bring back to our facility and unzip the bag and meet this young boy. And oftentimes we actually do meet people after they're dead. That's an example of a very challenging situation and all the pieces that come with it. And staying healthy is a challenge too. And I would say to be able to grieve and still be able to have fun.
Sure. Yeah.
Unfortunately, my grandkids and my wife and my family really helped me to remember about all the rest of it. And then I make sure that I'm in the ocean as often as I can be. The ocean is a great support. All the ways I'm challenged to show up no matter what I'm feeling or going through, to be able to drop it and meet it, which I think probably is a challenge for many of us to meet what's we're being faced with. I think I don't get overwhelmed, but I can see it from here sometimes and get to the overwhelm. And I think my experience is that's true for a lot of people right now. So those, I would say, staying healthy mentally, emotionally, staying spiritually, and that my spiritual relationship is alive and vital and real.
Yeah.
So, Bodhi, I think that picking up that 5-month-old was very difficult for you. And there are others in the world who have to face maybe not a 5-month-old, but, when you meet somebody who has died, and it's like a shock to you when you have to unzip that bag and see that it's a 5-month-old baby who's had an autopsy. Do you have a physical process for yourself to be certain that you can stay resourced during that moment? And I guess because I'm asking you through like the shaman lens, like how do you show up and stay safe, energetically, spiritually?
First of all, it's not anything like shock. I think it's more about relaxing into what I've been called to do. And of course, now I have 15 or more years of experience of meeting the unknown. We all do, but that's the nature of life, to not assume it's just going to be like it was yesterday. Being relaxed is really big. Again, having a spiritual foundation sometimes shows up really well, not always.
Yeah, I like that, being relaxed.
I asked for help. I asked for help from God, or whatever name you give to that. We heard a prayer the other day. Please help me. My boat is small. The ocean is so vast. I can't do this by myself. Give me the strength and the courage and the heart and what I need to go meet. That works. And, tuning, just like we started here, taking a moment, taking a moment. I feel actually in the same way that this feels big. I feel honored that this is the work I've been called to do. So all of that makes it so I can show up for those kind of things. Not only that, show up for the mom of that 5-month-old baby who, when she came to see him, wouldn't leave, understandably so. And, how to hold space for that. I cry a lot. I don't try to keep myself separate at all. I don't know that I could. It's amazing how easily I cry about all that stuff with people. They may not be crying, but I don't hold back. It's funny. We went to see my granddaughter's high school play last night, and it was Shakespeare. And just to see these kids giving everything they had, I was bawling at the end of that play. It's like, what's up with that? But no, I don't even think what's up with that. It's, I don't get in the way of a family. I don't want to become part of the story at the same time. I'm very aware of if I need to get out of the space to feel what I'm feeling, I do.
Yeah. I have that same tendency to cry at any moment. My kids are always giving me trouble about it, but but it's true. I think there's an energy of acceptance. We had a choir concert last night, and we had this one gospel soloist. It was so beautiful. And I told her afterwards, the hardest part for me was I was crying because it was so beautiful. And it's really hard to sing when you're crying. So that's great. It's funny that we've heard that from, I think, our last two guests have both spoken about the fact that they cry easily.
They do.
Yeah. So there's something about this work, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like I don't cry. That's something my kids actually notice too. Like I tend to be like really great when everybody else is falling apart, and I relax. I really do. I like notice that moment when everybody needs to emote and cry and fall, and I don't know. I'm like, I just breathe and I'm just holding it, but I don't have this desire to join in the crying or. Yeah, but I think that's a gift. I'd like to sit with that one, and hopefully I will become a crier too. I've never been a crier.
Hey, don't be calling me a crier.
Okay, a weeper?
Yeah. Just be who you are, darling. You're perfect.
I cry in other ways. Okay.
There you go.
You know, the Hawaiians, I don't know if they do it now, but they had people who were like professional, but they were the wailers.
Oh, yeah.
And they would come to memorials or funerals to get everybody else connected to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an ancient tradition, actually, because one of my tias, who passed away a few years, that's what she liked to do. She actually went to random funerals and sit in the back and cry as much as she wanted to. And that's what she decided to do for her service work.
What a beautiful work. Beautiful work. Yeah. Is there anything that you would say frightens you about the end of life, or about, again, sort of what kind of resources do you have, or what kind of support do you need from your community or from your family? You've said a little bit about your family giving you that place to be. Is there anything else you could speak to around that?
If I was afraid of anything about it, it would be I'm not afraid of dying, but I'm afraid of dying today or tomorrow. There's too much I want to do and contribute. And at the same time, I work with that to not feel that a failure because I didn't do as much as I wished I could, because I don't live that way. I don't want to live that way. In fact, I told somebody the other day, I wish I was 50 instead of 70, not because I care about being younger, but because there's so much I still want to bring forth in terms of contributing. You know, that's always been my path.
Yeah. Oh, just talking about, what kind of resources you have with that fear. What kind of things do you turn to when you're feeling that sense? And you sort of spoke to that already. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd want to speak to?
Well, of course, it's all about practicing letting go. It's not only the practice for healthy living, but it's the supreme practice for letting go when we're dying. I've seen all kinds of dying. In fact, when I was first made a hospice volunteer in like the year 2000, I'd never sat with dying people. And they, hospice started asking me to go into homes to sit with dying people. And I did. And I thought, wow, I'm kind of in the school of how do people actually do this? Or as it turned out, how do people refuse to do it while they're doing it? That became a huge teaching for me. And I'm not afraid of the dying part. I don't have an answer about how I'll respond to it. Because people asked me in this class the other day, what would you do? Would you choose to end your life? I don't know. Mm-hmm. I do my best to practice I don't know and not feel that that's lesser than or isn't valuable. Actually, I think I don't know is one of the most valuable things and important things to stand on doing. I don't know. I'm certainly not afraid of being dead at all. Some part of me could look forward to it, but that's not my work. I don't spend time looking forward to it. But the dying piece is, I've seen so much about how your dying isn't just about you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's an important piece that I bring to the conversation. What if your dying isn't just about you? And it's not. Even your life, it really isn't your life, which of course is a radical thing to say in the West, where it's my life, I get to do what I want. Just do it. Be all you can be, that kind of stuff. Have it your way.
Yeah. That's really good, really important.
It is. Bodhi, would you expand on the death isn't all about you or just about you? Tell me more about that.
Well, I'll give you an example. This 5-month-old baby, for example, I just saw it. So the mom came one day by herself. She came back 2 days later and brought her other 4 kids and her sister's 3 or 4 little kids and her brother and her brother's partner. And imagine that those little kids had that experience at the age of, that some of those kids were 3 or 4 or 5. And that's a story that lives on for them to tell their people and their kids. That's a healing story that goes out about making death normalized, let's say. I've seen that a number of times where kids, and not just kids, but family, have participated in the dying and the death of someone. You know, in terms of people being afraid of death, in this culture, we're not around it. It's kind of hidden away. And the normal muscle is grandma died quick. Let's call the funeral home to have her taken away. And of course, that does a tremendous disservice to the family to be there with grandma. And if you send grandma away, the next time you see her, she's either been embalmed and looks kind of like grandma, or you go to pick up her ashes or, you know, the bone fragments. And that's a huge disconnect in terms of not participating and grieving throughout all those steps. So, you know, I mean, that's the most obvious example of how it's not just about you.
Yes.
I don't think your life belongs to you. So the next thing, obviously, is how you choose to die ripples out. And even if you choose to end your own life, it ripples out. And mostly what I saw as an early hospice volunteer was how people were refusing to die while they were dying, right? Kind of backing into their death. And the silly notion that you could live as normal a life as possible while you were dying, which to me is a bizarre statement. You could apply any psychological structure to working with depressed, dying people. To me, that's bizarre. Dying is not the same as anything else.
So true, yeah.
It is a little bit like childbirth, though, because the folks that I've sat with, you know, sometimes it takes a day, sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. And in my childbirth with my kids, it took a while. Like, you kind of thought it was coming and it didn't. And you got better and you walked around. And I was think about that, you know, when I watch people at the end of their life, if they're not constricted against it, they go through these like waves of processing.
I would say yes. And the ways they are similar are very beautiful and powerful and important in terms of moving from one world to another world. And yet the way they're most obviously different, which is the overlay on the whole thing, which makes them completely different, is that in birthing, of course, the prayer is it's a healthy baby that lives. And in dying, it's really the opposite, right? It's success when you die in the dying. And so that changes the dynamic, in my view, completely. And I've been at a number of births and been at a number of deaths, so it's the same and it's very different.
Yeah, I was wondering about if you wanted to talk more about some of the work that you're doing there as far as the land that you're looking at and some of those things, if you'd like to talk a little bit about some of that.
Well, as the only nonprofit funeral home in Hawaii, and I've been told very likely the only nonprofit funeral home in America, we're transforming what the funeral home is. You know, the funeral home in general has a lousy reputation. Understandably so. It should be a money transaction to help people when somebody dies. You go to the funeral home, maybe you've done this, and maybe you're grieving and you're in shock, and it's a really lousy state to make a business decision. Most funeral homes, the funeral directors, the funeral arrangers work on commissions and encouraged, and maybe more than encouraged, motivated to upsell. And of course, it's easy to upsell with people who are grieving and want to do right by grandma, especially if there'll be a public viewing. And, you know, of course, you want to spend the $15,000 on some elaborate box, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're not selling anything at our nonprofit funeral home. Of course, we have to legally have a price list. We abide by the price list as best we can because we're a business also, right? We're paying rent, et cetera, and paying people. But we'll work with anybody whether they have money or not. But more importantly than that, people understand and experience that we're not selling them anything, that we're here to serve them and show up for them and help and hold them. And basically, we fall in love with the people we work with, and they feel held in a way maybe they have never been held before, feel safe to the degree that they don't have to apologize for what they're going through. We've changed the atmosphere in not putting out any energetic of selling anything. And I think it's transformational to what a funeral home is, which really is about sacred service. It's not about not about selling, it's about sacred service, and needs to be returned to community work in the recognition that this is something we as a community do together. We take care of our dying and our dead. That's a big piece of what we do, and that's a lot of what the education component is about. That's huge, that piece itself. And so, to your question, we'd like to do that with a cemetery, with a burial ground. And as you know, there is a movement towards more green, natural burial. We only do green burial. In fact, I make very simple pine box, beautiful caskets. But there's a cemetery that'll let us bury someone in a shroud or a cardboard box. And we're the only funeral home in Hawaii burying whole bodies in the ocean. Quite beautiful, actually, to be on a boat for an hour with the body wrapped in a shroud on board. It's quite beautiful. So we'd like to do that on land, and we have a vision of combining a burial ground with a playground and a community gathering place and a pet cemetery. And an art studio where kids could come and make, let's say, tiles with their dog's name on it to be added to the altar at the pet cemetery. So to bring, what do I say? I say where life and death meet in healthy community life. So it's not something over there that maybe people go to and maybe people don't go to. You know, most people want to be cremated mainly because it's way less costly, but also we in the West have lost the connection to what it means to go sit by the side of the bones of our people. And in America, you on the average, you move every 5 years. So most of us don't go back to visit those places, and maybe don't know where they are. And so we've lost the understanding of the value of having a place to go sit with the bones of your people. You know, it's funny, as a Sufi, we talk about that which doesn't die, the soul and the ever living. And I went on a pilgrimage, and maybe you did too, Wakil. I went on a pilgrimage to India with a bunch of Sufis, and every day we'd go visit another tomb and sit by the tomb. And you think, what's up with that? And there's something to it.
Yes.
Something to it. So we'd like to transform a community's relationship with their dead, because the common notion is that they're gone. I don't experience that as being true. I think that came through the church a long time ago, and we might be the only culture, not just America, but the Western mind that is spread everywhere, that the dead are gone, or the dead are gone into the light and they don't need us. Those kind of notions, I don't subscribe to those stories. In fact, when I really sit with tuning to my friends and the people who've gone before me, one of the places I think we go is that we go sit around the fire with our friends and our people who have died, and we tell stories, and we laugh and tell jokes, and we look down here and see who's suffering, who's having a challenging time, and we all pray for those people or that person. And when I really sit with that, I feel those people praying for us. God knows we need a lot of prayers right now. I don't know how I ended up over there, but there you have it.
That's wonderful, though. I love it. I do love it. Yeah.
Beautiful. But I would love to talk about my training that's coming up, getting that word out there, which is a 7-week training online. So you can be anywhere, and we meet for 2 hours, two times a week. And that's a threefold training. One, doing the work of preparing for death, because first I started out training people to care for dying people, and then I'd already started after that. I started teaching people how to do all the work of preparing for death, because it's one of the most enlivening. And then I realized that people who are caring for dying people really need to do their own work. The training is about doing the work of preparing for death, or at least the understanding of the work that needs to be done, and then how to care for dying people, the spiritual care, the emotional, psychological care, which turns out to be way more important than the rest of it. Where your passwords are, although those are equally important. Where you keep your, those are at it. And so then the other piece is how to show up for dying people. And be useful to dying people. And the third piece is how to show up for what's dying in the world, how to build willingness and capacity to not be completely overrun by the immensity of what's happening.
Yeah.
So that training starts in January. If you go to our website, doorwayintolight.org, to the education page, you can learn more about that piece.
Yeah, we'll put a link in our podcast.
Thank you.
Notes.
And as you said, some of what I'm doing is continuing the work that Ramdas was so engaged in terms of conscious dying. Some of my work is he used the term the three hearts. One of the leading causes in this country of death is congestive heart failure. I don't think that's a physical thing. How many of them have our emotional, psychological hearts congested and our spiritual hearts congested? So that's the work of uncongesting the physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual hearts.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Thank you. I think you got a student. Maybe some more too. Yeah. We will, as I said, we'll put links in the podcast notes for all of these things so that people can get in touch and find out more.
Find you.
And
thank you.
We deeply appreciate you and all your work and, my beloved friend.
We will end each episode with a short poem. Here's this week's poem by Mark Nepo. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch as this ache makes me look for those I've lost. In the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I'm adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad and everything is so beautiful.
That is such a beautiful poem. Touches the heart. Beautiful, beautiful.
I love how this poem just kind of makes me go in and I can see and hear and feel all these little details.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe I'll read it again. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away, and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I am adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad, and everything is beautiful. Thank you, Mark Nepo. So beautiful.
You.
Well, we have some wonderful guests lined up. In our next episode, we'll be hearing from Reverend John Mabry, a minister and an author whose most recent novel explores the spiritual, psychological, and emotional response of a small town whose residents literally come face to face with their own death.
Then, in the coming weeks, we have a few more excellent guests and interviews to share their stories with you.
And we want to hear from you all. We know there are many poignant and moving stories, and we're excited to share them. You can email us at endoflifeconvo@gmail.com. That's all one word, all lowercase, endoflifeconvo, CONVO, @gmail.com.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. Thanks to my daughter Lucero and Nico Rush, who have cheerfully assisted us as our editors and tech support. Additional resources, transcript of this episode, and links to our social media will be in the podcast notes.
Yeah, thank you so much. And please subscribe, tell your friends, follow us on social media, and consider supporting us through Patreon. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand.